couldn't do the program, I should start myself. So Yusuf was joking, but I'm going to chair myself. So. It's just sharing and exchanging of information knowledge. I make now the share of my screen to supposed to be the full screen mode. Where is the full screen mode?
I think the icon at the bottom that's like a screen just near the adjust the size, the zoom window. We'll put it on full screen for you.
Maybe you can share the full screen.
I think this is a good idea, just to stop sharing and share the full screen.
Yeah.
Is that now?
It's not sharing at the moment. If you click
sharing.
share again, hopefully it'll do the full screen.
We'll share again. Full screen, not share.
Yeah, perfect.
Right. So I'll try in 10, 12 minutes. We're supposed to make like 15 minutes each or 12 minutes each and allow for some questions and sharing some discussions at the end. So I'll try in this short time to give you what is Egypt's policy strategies and action plans towards promoting open science. And why it doesn't move? There's a problem here to move the lines. Do you see the second screen?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Do you see
Yes,
the second
yes,
slide?
Yeah.
Slide is here.
Okay, so I have to switch to the presentation itself. So actually, I'm sure all of you, because than me, knows how much the definition for science. And it's not only about the open access of data and applications, but it's a broader concept that includes interoperability of scientific infrastructures, sharing of methodologies and tools and applications. So open science to develop a strategy or policies for promoting open science, we need to actually establish this concept among the research institutions, the academia, the government, the publishers, and all actors and the players that share and work with science. When we look to the ecosystem of the open science, it's research centers, it's policymakers, universities, individuals, business, government. And suppose when you think about a strategy for open science, you need to take care and take into account all these wide spectrum of open science ecosystems. So the open science, we suppose, or we anticipate that will be more efficient, reliable, and responsive to societal challenges. When you share all the scientific infrastructures, tools, methodologies among all people, you would make some more transparency and quality of research, more speeding up the transfer of knowledge, more promotion to the collaboration on research ideas and thoughts. You will increase knowledge spillover to science, economy, and society. You will address the global challenges and more effectively will promote citizenship, engagement, and participation and the quality of their life. Egypt put very ambitious 2030 plan for 2030 to be on the top 30th economies nation over the globe. And this is very optimistic vision to jump to such rank of economies among the world. And more importantly, it's based on knowledge-based economy. And when you go to a knowledge-based economy, so you need science, technology, and innovation strategy that achieve such optimistic national optimistic aim to be on the top of 30s. And this science, technology, innovation strategy based on our 2030 vision, our industrial revolution fourth and fifth, SDGs, and to be creative and innovative society, the society itself, to be more creative and innovative, producing science, technology, and knowledge within a comprehensive system ensures the development value of knowledge and innovation. I think this is a kind of more, let us say, optimistic and requires a lot of work, a lot of commitment that to reach this position. So the science, technology, and innovation strategy 2030 for Egypt to be among top 40 of the countries in the field of innovation, jump to the top 40 countries in innovation, to be among the top 20 in number of patents, which is a direct link to the industry, to be among the top 40 of quality of scientific research, to be among the top 20 of the intellectual property rights, to be among the top 40 of the retaining the innovative talents and capabilities. This is very, very, I see it optimistic, and we have to work, and we are working on this optimistic strategy. If you look to the governance structure for this national ecosystem, see the president at the top, higher council for scientific and technology that led by the president to guide on the science, technology, and innovation. And they got in the middle the policy, which is the Academy of Scientific Research, the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research, the Supreme Council of Universities, the Supreme Council of Research Centers. And in the bottom, the implemental universities, research centers, funders, all the actors, and the process go from top to bottom, bottom to up, to ensure achieving such kind of optimistic strategy. We put a couple of tracks and some pillars for achieving this strategy. The first one of nurturing enabling environment, which is based on policies, is the ecosystem, academia, industry, PPPs, international cooperation, and the other one, production and technology for targeted SDG goals, like renewable energy, like water resources, management of water, industry, strategic industrial textile, for example, IR. So both nurturing the ecosystem by policies and the strategies and achieving these tracks, we anticipate this would achieve our optimistic goals of STI to be among the 340s to 20s and the top 30s of the group. If you look to the heritage, we have universities, students, and postgraduate. More than 27 state universities, 30 private and public universities, 4 international public universities, 4 international branches campus, 3 technological universities, 8 technological colleges. And the 3 technological universities, which will be 8 very soon, with the 8 technological colleges, this is meet the TEVIT strategy, how to make technical and vocational. We got 126 teaching staff, 3.4 million students, 250,000 postgraduates. Research centers, we got 11 research centers belongs directly to the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research, and 15 other thematic research centers with other ministries like Ministry of Agriculture. They have their own research centers dedicated to agriculture, water resources, urban planning, and 300 research centers in private sectors. And all these kind of research centers are under the framework of achieving the national agenda. Definitely, we got 2 funders for research, Science and Technology Development Fund and Academy of Scientific Research. And the government committed to put extra money for funding the research. So the STI readiness, you would see find an investment from the government, you will see legislation, and we launched more than 20 new legislation to promote science and open science. We got initiatives that is running to implement the strategy, and we got infrastructure that needs to be more refurbished and increased and developed. And I'll show you some examples. For the legislation, for example, we developed in the last couple of years 20 legislations. 9 for scientific research, 1 for TEVIT, 5 for medical hospitals, 1 for higher education. This all 20 legislations and reforms of all the legislation make it an enabling environment for research and development and innovation and open science as well. Fund investment increased. We reached now in Egypt more than 1% of GDP to scientific research and 60% for education. This jump of the investment and the fund make a lot of improvement in the scientific research outcomes. The 2 main contributor of fund to the open science or scientific research is the Academy of Scientific Research and the STDF, Science Technology Development Fund. So these, they put in targeted goals, targeted occupations, and we'll see some example of this. We put a priority for energy, just energy for renewable energy to achieve the climate change and to improve our needs. We put health, water, food security, and indeed education. Infrastructure, we established a new 31 Center of Excellence in 14 thematic focus areas to achieve this kind, like water resources, like renewable energy, like health. We made re-innovation of 56 central labs. This re-innovation costed 250 million Egyptian pounds. We got 37 central labs are accredited, and we are working to get this accreditation for the rest of the 56. So how to improve the quality, how to improve the quantity, this is the commitment to invest more in building such central labs, which is available for all scientific community. Food and agriculture, for example, we bought 100 million Egyptian pounds to promote science and innovation to increase, for example, wheat yield from 18.5 to 24.5 unit per acre. This kind of increase is targeting to filling the gap of food security and wheat. Production of new rice seeds, a lot of other agricultural research. Basic and applied science, which we all agree that this is the basic of promoting science and innovation. We put 540 million Egyptian pounds to promote basic and applied science. We are now 33 initiatives, it costed about 84 million EGP. For example, manufacture of spare products and the components for power plants, manufacture of a complete unit for production of floating fish food. We are giving more attention to the fish resources and our coastal resources, and one of these is the fish production. And food for fish is quite important to suit our environment and suit our species. So promoting the industrial and innovation in floating and fish food. The manufacture of ammonia, for example, injection toolkit for agricultural purposes, or the new development of agricultural land. We made a national incubator to support youth and startups. 20 incubators being developed, 70 million Egyptian pound fund involved in this 20 incubators, 135 incubated individual and groups. Out of them, 75 startups already started, and we trained 2,000 trainees. We might help these 75 startups, but the rest are able to start their own startups away from this incubation based on the training and experience and knowledge they gained. We promoted kind of technological alliances to set 11, 12 industry, academia, research centers, NGOs together to make some technological science and innovation, pharmaceutical, electronics, textile, renewable energy. This kind of alliances is quite important and helpful to share knowledge and open the science between the different spectrum from the community, like industry and academia, universities, research centers, NGOs, sometimes stakeholders themselves. So it's got to benefit from the outcomes of this. We developed TICA offices just to among the university and research centers to support the researchers and the individuals how to bridge from scientific research into industry, how to make a patent, how to go beyond the research into societal level. We thought about Science Park and how to propose and try to bring together some research and innovation stakeholders, triple Ps together in a community for Science Park. The outcomes of this one, the increase in research publications and citations, jumped into a very recognizable position. We now 17 pharmaceutical research, number 17 across the globe, and 25 in nanotechnology. We got a sharing with Africa and other Asia. There is another with Europe and States, but I just picked up this couple of slides to show how much we cooperate internationally with the rest of the world in publication and the field-based citation. And this field-based citation, we above average. We increased a lot from in the last 10 years. We are above average now. So we are anticipating by in a couple of years to double this field-based citation because the average is 1. Recently, yesterday, the ranking global knowledge index, we got a very first in Africa in education. We got 53 over the globe, 1 out of 54 countries in knowledge index. And this is quite important. This is give us the privilege that what we are doing is probably correct, and we have to continue. And we are 58 in the innovation and development. So I think in this way, I just gave a nutshell what Egypt is doing in policy, strategies, and implementation to promote the open science and scientific research. By international cooperation, by sharing this with others, we will be able to be kind of. I thank you very much. I think I took more than the 15 minutes, so I'm really sorry about that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's great to see the range of initiatives you have running in Egypt and also the impact that they're having already. Did you want to take questions for your talk, or shall I go on with my presentation?
Thank you very much. Okay.
Do you want me to go on, Islam, or did you want questions?
We could take after each presentation one burning question if there is any. If not, we will proceed with the presentation and open the discussion at the end. What do you prefer?
I don't mind at all.
Okay. If there is any burning question, we could take it. If not, we will proceed. I assume not. So we will move to the second presentation, supposed to be Sarah Jones. And Sarah, let me introduce Sarah. She put few lines for his biography, but few lines are very, very highlighting how much she is experienced and gaining a lot of knowledge. She is the engagement manager in EOSC at GIANT. She works with NRENs on supporting open science. So it's your area. She is an information professional with over a decade, 10 years working in research data services in the higher education sector. As a digital creation center, she led the DMB online. You might give us what is the DMB online service, and worked in consultancy and training. Sarah was rapporteur on the European Commission, Fair Data Expert Group, and independent expert on the EOSC Executive Board, chairing the Fair Working Group. She now sits on the EOSC Association Board of Directors. You are top management level. You will give us your idea. You will give us NRENs and universities are supporting open science. Let us see, and the floor is yours, Sarah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Islam. And thanks to everyone joining the session today. So I was asked to give a bit of an overview about how the different NRENs and universities are supporting open science. Like Islam, I just wanted to make a couple of points about open science at the start. First off, that it's not just about sharing results, it's about carrying out science in a way that's open, allows others to communicate and engage with the work that's going on. So it's about all stages of the research life cycle. It's not just that end kind of sharing or publishing phase. And also that we're really covering the whole spectrum of research results. So it's not just about making publications open or sharing the data, but also the associated source code, the methodologies and workflows that have been used so that other researchers can engage with the science at large. And I think we've seen certainly within Europe a very growing importance of open science. When you look at the European Commission's funding programs, obviously they've invested a lot into EOSC and this European data lake. So to have different data spaces, thematic data spaces where we're kind of pooling the data into this data lake and investing in lots of new technologies like AI and data cubes and a quantum network. And I think that strategic importance at a kind of political and funder level has also led to a lot of work both at national and institutional levels, as we've just seen from Egypt, it being a top priority and having a big influence on policy and the investments that they're making and the returns they're seeing on that already. And within our community, the GIANT and the NREN community, we've seen people getting involved in various different levels in the governance of things like EOSC, but also as members of the association and in various different projects like EOSC Future or the different disciplinary cluster projects or regional projects like EOSC Nordic. So I think there's a big involvement of our community in open science, and that's something that we're continuing to see increase. So what I wanted to reflect on first is what's happening in institutions. And it was mentioned in my bio that I used to work at the Digital Curation Centre. And I wanted to reflect on some work we did there when we were supporting universities in the UK to establish data services. And we worked with a series of 20 odd universities, and we developed this model of the different areas where data services were needed. And I wanted to reflect on some of the findings from that program, because I think that will help other institutions think about setting up their services too. So some of the common activities that were needed when people were establishing a kind of data service suite at the institution was agreeing a strong research lead. So often the PVC for research, or kind of very senior researchers who are also involved in the policy at the institution, would chair steering groups and really advocate from a research angle why this was needed. And we found that that led to much higher success levels in establishing services and also getting adoption of them. And most of the universities set up some kind of steering group that brought together the different service units, so the library, the research office, and the IT, others like ethics or the archives or any kind of preservation groups, and brought them together with research representatives to really kind of think about what the priority needs were. And most of the institutions did a series of kind of requirements gathering exercises with different research groups or departments, and then would pilot the services before rolling them out to the whole institution. And there was also a lot of capacity building and training, both of the support staff, so working with liaison librarians and training them and supporting researchers, also developing new career profiles like data stewards and research software engineers, and lots of training for the research communities themselves. And often this focused on early career researchers to kind of provoke the culture change that's needed for open science. And I think a similar model could be applied in other cases. So if you're looking at setting up institutional services, these are some good starting points. When we surveyed after a year or two who had what in place, I think some of the findings here you can see replicated in wider work. Often it's quite easy setting up the policy and the strategy, making sure you've got support for data management planning. That's what the DMP online tool we offer at DCC is about. And also things like making sure there's active data storage, kind of collaboration spaces for researchers, and skills were the kind of low-hanging fruit that many institutions could put in place quite quickly. But some of the details around kind of sharing sensitive data, having more controlled access or preservation services, and also making sure that they had business plans in place so the services were sustainable, were much more challenging. And I think we see this replicated both at national and at international level. So the areas that are still a big challenge for EOSC are also around the business plans and the data preservation and sensitive data. So I think these are the areas that are kind of more difficult to get set up. In terms of what the institutions did, many developed very basic resources like guidance web pages that pulled together all of the support from the different service units, because it was quite hard for researchers to navigate where they could get support from. And I think this is, again, quite a quick win to do at an institutional level. And they also often developed online training for researchers. And this Mantra resource from Edinburgh University is a free online resource. It's something that you can actually download and put into your own virtual learning environments. And many other institutions have done that. So there's lots of resources out there from the university programs that others could pick up on. And another thing institutions did was did many consultations with researchers to provide support for their specific project, to understand what their needs were in terms of the storage and the sharing, what the potential challenges were in terms of the ethics or the licensing, and then to provide more tailored advice. And this often focused around the data management plan stage of the life cycle, so they could provide that advice early on and help the researcher prepare the application. And it also gave awareness of what support was available within the institution. So these consultations have also worked very well. And then another kind of trend we see is that really many institutions are trying to embed support teams with the research teams. So many institutions now have teams of data stewards who have knowledge of different research domains, and they'll partner with different research groups and help with the data management throughout that project. You can see Delft is a very good example of that, but many Dutch universities have teams of data stewards, and it's a trend we see happening internationally as well. So there's lots of different types of support that's available. Institutions also have a range of services that they offer, so tools around data management planning or their research information management systems to track the different research outputs, all of the lab notebook and analysis tools and their collaboration environments, and then obviously repositories for sharing the outputs as well. And I think what I would say characteristically is that it's still a highly variable environment. No institution really has a full service suite, and they're often using a mix of different types of applications, some open source software, some commercial products, and there's a very different status across the different institutions and countries still. Where you see things most advanced, so this is an example from Harvard, they already have many research data tools in place. And what they're really focusing on now is trying to connect between them. So researchers have an easier pipeline from creating their DMP to creating their data, making sure that's properly documented and seamlessly deposited in the repositories. So once people have the tools in place, so I think one of the biggest jobs is trying to make all those tools work together and connecting things up. And that's something we see at the kind of international level and EOSC as well. So to move on then to what's happening nationally, as we've seen with the Egypt example, there's a big push for kind of national strategy and policy. Many European countries already have this in place. So there's good models you can look at and replicate. In many countries, there's also some kind of coordination role. So an open science coordinator as an individual to try and pull together the activities happening in different institutions, or some kind of forum like a Research Data Alliance node or Open Air NOAD to kind of bring together the different parties and get them discussing. There's also been a lot of investment in projects at a national level to try and build infrastructure, not just within the institutions, but across all of those institutions. And you'll see many national services for things like the research information management systems, like the IRIS system in Italy, or tools like DMP Tooli, which is a data management planning tool in Finland. And I did some work when I started at GEON looking at the NRENs and how they're engaging in the national services. And overall, there's quite a lot of activity happening through the NRENs, being involved in EOSC or in setting the national policy or implementing that with different services. And I would stress that I think there's lots of relevant services that NRENs are offering already. So even something as simple as like the file sender service or the different cloud services that they're making available, the kind of collaboration environments like Research Drive or Switch Drive so that researchers can share their content. And many NRENs are also involved in things like repository services too. So there's a lot that the NREN community is already doing to try and support open science within their countries. Some NRENs like CSC and others who collaborated with them like SURF have also developed kind of tool sets, a whole suite of tools to support the kind of discovery and publishing and sharing of data. So the Udat service suite, which is a set of open source tools like B2 Share, B2 Drop, that you can connect together, was something that came out of a project that a few of the NRENs had been involved in. And it's still being supported through now a kind of legal entity that Udat's become. So again, there's things that have been developed by the NRENs that can be picked up by others. Within other NRENs like JISC, they've also done procurement frameworks. So JISC has a dynamic purchasing system for repositories. They were conscious that many universities were contracting out their repository services, and they wanted to make it easier for them to do so. So they brought a number of suppliers onto a framework, so it's easier for the institutions to get those repository services at better deals and terms and conditions because it's done for the sector as a whole. And similarly, we've just been developing within GEON a series of open science case studies. And like the JISC procurement framework for repositories, HEANet's done the same for research information management systems. So they developed a procurement framework that allows the universities in Ireland to purchase these CRIS systems more easily. And they did a lot of market engagement sessions with the different providers and with the universities to understand what systems were most in use and most needed. And then they developed a framework and a call to tender that focused on aspects of service quality and reliability and the kind of uptime and the support aspects rather than just the cost. And they have 6 providers in this framework, and it runs till 2024. And the first institutions are starting to procure their CRIS systems that way now as well. And again, this is a model that potentially could be picked up by other NRENs if you're wanting to offer similar support. One of the notions you'll see coming out a lot within the European context is also fair data. Within DIKE, the Danish NREN, they did a lot of work with researchers in different disciplines to increase the adoption of FAIR. So they ran what they call metadata for machine workshops, where they help a research community develop their metadata profile and do that in a machine actionable way. So once they create their metadata, it's easily used by different services. And they also developed verification roadmaps with the different communities to kind of increase the fairness of their data and help them understand what the key steps were to do that, to deposit in repositories, to make sure they're getting an ID and to make their metadata available. They also developed a number of training resources, different postcards, a fairy tale, and an online course. And again, these are available for reuse by others to train researchers on FAIR. And there's a number of case studies on how FAIR is being implemented by different disciplines. So you can see what the pitfalls are for different research communities. And the final case study example I wanted to give here is from SURF. They did a lot of work trying to help signpost what support's available within different institutions. And they use their compute service calls as a way to flag those. Many researchers are applying for compute to SURF. And now the application form flags the different data management requirements and also the tools that are available within the institution. So researchers are prompted to think about where they're going to store their data and also where it will be archived. So when they come to the end of the grant period, it triggers a reminder about archiving the data and making sure that they know the local services that are available for that. And this activity has fostered a much closer liaison and links between the NRENs and the different universities and being aware of the local support that's available. As I said at the start, the NREN community across Europe is very involved in EOSC at various different layers. Both at the governance layer, we have representatives on the steering board, on the association board, and the different task forces. And many NRENs are also members, sometimes mandated members of EOSC as well. But I think a lot of the engagement also happens in the project layers. So the NRENs are involved in the big infrastructure projects like EOSC Future, as well as many of the regional projects and the different kind of cluster projects as well. And they're implementing different things, obviously the AAI, which is our core work, but lots of work on the interoperability and compute and the different tools and AI activities as well. So just to kind of draw to a conclusion, I think one of the threads that comes out of this talk is that open science really requires a team approach. It needs all the different service units in universities to be working together, or all of the different national level services to be collaborating, but also collaborations across the research teams and the support staff. And I think the new roles that we're seeing emerge, like data stewards, are really important for that. Obviously, NRENs are already offering many relevant services, and I think there's good models that can be picked up by others in the region to kind of echo what's happened elsewhere. And engagement in projects or in infrastructures like EOSC, I think, is also really key to try and help universities support and make use of the national and regional infrastructure. And what we're seeing now is a kind of common thread is the work to connect between the different services. So EOSC is really focusing on the interoperability and the federation of different repositories. And similarly, that's the kind of work in the most advanced universities, trying to connect up all of the different tool sets. So that's all I had to present. I'll stop the slide share, come back to Let's Get Digital.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much. So for the sake of time, let us move to the next presentation. Dr. Anna Perser. And Anna is a program specialist in Unesco headquartered in France. And she is a specialist for science policy and partnership and the division of science policy and capacity building at the Unesco headquarters in Paris. She is ecologist by training with a PhD in ecotoxicology, and she is a member or a Biosphere Reserve. By the way, I'm a member of this National Committee of the Biosphere, Managed Biosphere Reserve, and she has a lot of experience with raising office in New York, and it relates strengthly to the science policy interface and promoting science, technology, and innovation in implementing the United Nations 2030 agenda. Since 2019, she has been coordinating the development of the Unesco Recommendations on Open Science. The floor is yours, Anna.
Thank you very much, Islam, and it's really a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you very much for the organizers for the invitation and for this open science session today. My role today is to present to the participants the UNESCO Recommendation on Open Science, which has just been adopted by the 193 member states of UNESCO on the 23rd November. And it is basically the first international standard-setting instrument, legal instrument on open science. So I'm very happy to be able to present to you today this instrument, knowing also that many people who are participating here and some of the speakers as well have actually contributed to this process of development of the UNESCO Recommendation on Open Science. I will start sharing my screen, and I hope that you will all be able to see it.
Till Anna share her screen, there is a Q&A and the chat room if anyone had anything to ask or question to ask.
Great. I hope that you can see the screen now.
We do, yes.
So as I said, I will introduce the UNESCO recommendation on open science. And just before I start, I really would like to say that in a way, COVID-19 was very helpful for the open science community, because it really did make it very clear how important open science is to connect researchers, to connect and increase our knowledge, and also to connect science to providing solutions to the issues faced by society. So we've really seen the importance of timely and free access to scientific data, publication, and information, the importance of scientific collaborations and sharing of information at all levels between different researchers, between the disciplines, between regions, but also between other actors of society beyond the traditional scientific community. And then the importance of the science policy society dialogue, which is incredibly important for trust in science and for the uptake of science in decision-making processes. So again, it was really important. One of the most important lessons learned maybe from the COVID-19 crisis is exactly this importance of open science and openness of science more broadly. But what we've seen in the past 10 years, let's say, because open science is not a new concept, right? It has been around for some time. And we've seen a proliferation of different initiatives, very good initiatives at different level, at individual level, at institutional levels, regional levels, etc. But for the moment, I mean, until basically this November, we didn't really have an international policy and action framework for open science. We didn't really have a common definition of open science and a shared set of values and principles for implementation of open science. And that is the reason why UNESCO at its last general conference, so in 2019, tasked the organization to develop these standards as in form of a standard setting instrument on open science, which is the UNESCO Recommendation on Open Science. And just to explain to those who maybe are not familiar with these recommendations, these UNESCO recommendations are actually legal instruments in which the General Conference, which is constituted of the 193 member states of UNESCO, formulates principles and norms for international regulation of a specific question, and then invites the member states to take any legislative or other type of steps to actually put in place and apply these principles and norms within their respective territories. So these are not legally binding instruments as conventions, but they are extremely important both politically and morally. And on top of that, the member states who adopt the recommendation are required to report back to UNESCO every 4 years on the progress made with the implementation of the recommendation. So it is a mechanism that is put in place at the international level that provides an international framework for a specific issue. In this context, it's on open science, and then also provides a mechanism to monitor progress made and also take stock of the different challenges that different countries and actors may have during the implementation phase. So as I said, the text of the recommendation was adopted by 193 countries at the UNESCO General Conference on 23rd of November 2021. But this text has been really a result of a very long, 2-year-long consultative, inclusive and transparent multi-stakeholder process. And we really are very, very grateful to all the experts and non-experts, member states, governments, researchers, libraries, associations, NRENs who actually did provide input into this process. What one needs to know about the recommendation is, as I said, it's the first international normative instrument on open science. It contains the first internationally agreed definition of open science. And it is important because we did see while we were doing the different consultations that the perception of what open science is and how it should be done is actually different in different regions and among the different communities. So being able to bring all of these views together in a document that everybody agrees on was very important, and I think it can really help moving open science forward in the best possible way. It spells out, as I said, the consensus core values and guiding principles for open science. It also notices all the different actors and stakeholders of open science. Both Sarah in her presentation and also Islam mentioned the different actors within the science and open science ecosystem. And indeed, it is incredibly important that all these actors do their part in the implementation and operationalization of open science practices. The recommendation also recommends actions at different levels, proposes some innovative approaches at the different stages of the scientific cycle, and also calls for the development of a comprehensive monitoring framework for open science. Again, for the moment, we don't have at the international level a monitoring framework, and we're not really quite sure yet how to be more comprehensive in the way we monitor open science beyond just the numbers on open access or the number of articles published open access. We need to figure out a little bit more broadly what do we monitor when we talk about open science, and how do we monitor the impact also of open science on the production of knowledge, on the connection between science and society, on the way in which science provides solutions to the issues facing societies. So just very briefly with regard to the definition of open science, it the way open science is defined in the recommendation is as an ensemble of these movements which increase scientific collaborations and sharing of information for the benefits of science and society, which makes multilingual scientific knowledge openly available, accessible, and reusable for everyone, and opens the processes of scientific knowledge creation, evaluation, and communication to societal actors beyond the traditional scientific community. So as you can see, this concept is broad. It touches upon opening science and scientific processes and methods for scientists themselves, but also for the society as a whole. The recommendation also defines some key pillars of open science, again, in quite a broad and comprehensive way, trying to bring together all of these different perspectives from different actors of open science. We, of course, talk about the open scientific knowledge, which has open access to scientific publications, open research data, open educational resources, open source software and code, and open hardware. We also talk about open science infrastructures, both virtual and physical, open engagement of societal actors through citizen science or voluntary science, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, and then also this open dialogue with other knowledge systems, including indigenous peoples and indigenous knowledge holders, marginalized scholars, and local communities. So really, again, even these key pillars are an indication of the openness of science more broadly, not just in terms of open access to data or to scientific publications. And what was very much underlined by the member states and different actors is, of course, the importance of science communication within the context of open science, because, of course, once there is more information out there, it is also extremely important to be able to communicate on this science in an appropriate manner, with the distinctions that maybe need to be made with regards to some of the information that is there. Again, it's a very important part of open science, will be how do we build a culture of science where science communication really is there to help build this trust between science and society, and not the other way around. As I said, key values and principles were also identified and defined in the recommendation. And these include quality and integrity, collective benefit, equity and fairness, diversity and inclusiveness. And then a series of principles: equality of opportunities, transparency, responsibility, respect, collaboration, inclusion, flexibility, and sustainability. So each and every one of these principles and values is defined in the recommendation. Again, this was very important to be able to bring 193 member states with their different actors of open science to agree not just on the value in itself, but also of what that value means in the context of open science, because this is the basis of open science practices. So no matter which activity you have, and no matter how you tackle open science in your institution, in your country, in your region, it has to adhere to these values and principles in the end. There are several areas of action that are in the recommendation, and under each one of these areas, there is a series of different recommended actions for member states and for other actors. And you will find a role for NRENs also in several of these areas of action. Promoting a common understanding of open science, so advocacy and outreach. We still have a lot of people, both within and outside the scientific community, who don't necessarily understand very well what open science means. Developing an enabling policy environment, developing policy strategies to be able to implement them then within the different institutions or at different levels. Investing, of course, in human resources, investing in infrastructures, promoting collaboration and cooperation at all levels, promotion of some innovative approaches, and fostering of culture of open science more broadly. But as I said, under each and every one of these priority areas of action, there are very concrete steps for the and actions for member states and other actors to undertake to be able to implement this recommendation and to be able to foster open science within their systems and communities. So what are the key opportunities if open science is applied correctly and justly and equitably across the world? Of course, it increases access to knowledge and improves the quality and efficiency of the entire scientific process. So not just at the level of the output, but really within the whole cycle of scientific process. And it has the potential of making this process more transparent, more inclusive, and democratic. And by that also, it has the potential of building or increasing the society's trust in science as well. Open science can be a real game changer in bridging the science technology innovation gaps between and within countries, and also fulfilling the human right to science. But it has to be done in the appropriate way and in line with those core values and principles. The open science is global science, and so it is extremely important that all the different regions and all the different researchers, scientists, and open science communities in different parts of the world are at the same level of access and of capacity for open science. And then, of course, for the UN, what is also extremely important is that we see open science as a critical accelerator for the achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Of course, we understand that there is a lot of different challenges with open science, both in terms of their application for SDGs and for the implementation of the Unesco recommendation. It does require a change in the conventional scientific culture, and that at all levels. It is not just at the level of researchers, it really is at the level of administration of institutions, as Sarah was rightly pointing out to, and at the different other systems. It's kind of systemic change that needs to happen within the SDI system of the countries. It requires a capacity building, investment in adequate infrastructures, including reliable internet connectivity. Once again, it is extremely important that in all parts of the world, accessibility is the same, because otherwise the equity principles and fairness would not apply in this case. Alignment of incentives, revision of criteria for evaluation of scientific excellence and scientific careers. Of course, it is difficult, particularly for young scientists today in most of universities, to completely adhere to open science and the principles of open science, because the way their careers are evaluated is not necessarily aligned with those principles. So there is a whole movement of revision of these different criteria for evaluation of scientific excellence, and hopefully that will be put in place relatively soon to allow young researchers in particular to really engage in the open science movement. And then there are unintended negative consequences of open science practices, hierarchical behaviors, migration, exploitation, privatization of data. So it's important to understand that there are, of course, challenges, but there already are a series of initiatives developed to be able to address these challenges. So what we are hoping to do in UNESCO in the years to come, in the months to come, is really to continue to serve as this forum for exchange of ideas, good practices, lessons learned on implementation of open science, exchange and provide access to information, particularly through UNESCO's science programs. We really do want to continue support open science policy development and orientation for member states, and we are happy that there are several initiatives in place, and Omo will probably talk about one of them, where there is support provided to different member states who wish to put in place their open science policies and strategies. Monitoring of open science, we will go back to our open science community to understand what would be the best monitoring framework for open science, and then the mobilization of global open science partnership to support the implementation of the recommendation. We really do want all the partners, including the NRENs, to be part of the implementation within their countries, within their communities, because it's all, of course, it's only by doing this together that we will be able to implement this recommendation on the global level, and hopefully move with open science in the right direction. Of course, regional networks, regional open science platforms, regional networks are extremely important because they do galvanize both knowledge and the community within the region. So I'm extremely interested to see the discussion in this meeting and to see how from the Arab region we can galvanize this knowledge and networks around open science, also in the context of the implementation of the recommendation. So I think I will stop here, and then if there are any questions later on, I can respond to them as
well. Thank you very much. It's really a good presentation, but I think the time is going very fast. So let us discuss at the end of the session about how to collectively make a discussion. We'll move to the next speaker, Omo Owaya, and he is a Chief Strategy Officer in West and Central Africa Research and Education Network, WASREN, in Ghana. Omo is the pioneer CTO of the NREN and continues to work on the technical development of high-capacity network infrastructure for research and education. And before WASREN, he was CEO of DataSphere, a private consultancy sectors offering software development and project management to the education sector in Nigeria. He is a very good in capabilities of librarians and researchers and strengthen local service to support open science and research in Africa. The floor is yours, Omo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Islam.
And let us adjust the time, please. Yeah, try to see my finger when I just show something.
I'm going to try and save some time because I think, between Sarah and Anna, they've done a great job setting the stage and sort of pointing out the role NRENs can play. Another thing I thought, came out from their talks was the fact that open science, while it's global, needs local and regional considerations, in its approach and implementation, and that's what LIBSENSE is really about. So LIBSENSE started in 2017. It was born out of a recognition that, as NRENs, we had gotten involved in some early open science projects supported by the European Commission, notably SciGaia and Tandem. And we sort of realized that while we're building infrastructure, so to speak, repositories, identity federations, that the librarians, there's a core need for librarians, and they were missing in the room. So that's what LIBSENSE started out as, library support for this. But as we continue to sort of grow this community, because this community was like, bottoms up, it expanded and included other parties. So today it is based on library NREN collaborations, but this is now a broad collaboration of, around open science at different levels across Africa. So primarily our goals are similar to the sort of values and ideals expressed in the previous presentations. We want to support the cultural change that's required to adopt open science widely. We want to sort of, abstract the stakeholders from some of the technical problems they have by leveraging the NRENs to provide technical support. We want to build capacity across all the levels, and we want to work together to develop contextual value-added services. So it's a collaboration primarily governed by the 3 regional research RENs. It is led by WACREN, but in close partnership with the Ubuntu Alliance and ASREN. And currently it's being funded, we express this within the Africa Connect Free project, which is funded by the European Commission, and currently the sole supporter of, financially, of LIBSENSE. So the idea was to sort of demonstrate how this has evolved. There's a core foundational team that's been there from the beginning, trying to guide direction in which we go based on the principles that we've evolved as a community. It includes IFO, Irina will be speaking later in the day. There's also the Information School, University of Sheffield, who we work with, and the Confederation of Open Access Repositories. So these are partners who sort of, straddle international open science and sort of make sure that, whatever we're thinking locally is aligned with global practices. And then the national organizations that have made LIBSENSE, sort of grow so rapidly. The library consortia in the different countries, sometimes the associations that are not academic, and the NRENs themselves, and a host of other partners, as you can see. I will describe them as we go. So essentially, I've sort of talked about some of this, how we are organized. It is focused on strengthening open science across the spectrum. So we're building communities of practice. We're doing it in a very inclusive manner, and we have 3 working languages, Arabic, English, and French. And we have a focus on addressing inequality and social justice, the same principles that have been expressed in the recommendations of the UNESCO recommendations. In terms of work, we are organized in 3 areas, policy, infrastructure, and capacity building. The very nature of our organization as NRENs means that we can actually address this at all the levels. So as regional research networks, we're working together at that level. Our constituents as national research networks can engage at a national level, and their members, institutions, are the primary stakeholders. So policy, infrastructure, and capacity building sort of stretches both ways. So I thought I would sort of describe that, so that gives a bit more flesh. So for instance, on the continental level, what we have started or initiated is the rollout of what we're calling open science roadmaps, national open science roadmaps. Now, this is the intention of this is to bring stakeholders within the sovereign boundaries together to discuss their priorities, so that we can ensure that they're maintained as open science becomes more prevalent across Africa. On the infrastructure side, we're looking at examples to demonstrate how we can sort of leverage the economies of scale and all the benefits that open science can bring. One example there is the work we are doing with RUForum. RUForum is the Pan-African network of agricultural institutions. And in that case, we're both working with the researchers at the institutional level, but with RUForum at the continental level to sort of deploy an open access data platform for agriculture. On the policy side, I think Anna mentioned about the different organizations that contributed to that consultation. We had also come up with a statement of principles and the actions to support those principles that I'm really glad to see are quite aligned with the recommendations that were adopted. So the regional RENs also appreciate that there's going to be requirement for identification and access management in this new open science world, and are creating robust platforms to support that where they don't exist. On a regional level, again, we know this is going to, open science is not as advanced in many of our countries as it might be elsewhere. So one of the key activities that we have undertaken in collaboration with UNESCO is to bring regional higher education associations together to discuss how they would implement these policies that spoke to their own needs. So there are different topics within this area, and we've just started out in the South and East African region with the first iteration of these workshops. The next workshop will be held in co-location with WACREN 2022. That's now scheduled for Abidjan in March. Date's not completely fixed yet, so I can't give you a date, but we'll be announcing a date in the coming week. On the infrastructure side, we're doing similar, promoting countries to come together around NRENs supported infrastructure and leverage the economies of scale. On a national level, I talked about the open science roadmaps. We have already managed to get going in a number of countries, Uganda, Nigeria, Tanzania, and there's ongoing conversation in Cote d'Ivoire now to sort of host an open science day for the country in collocation with the WACREN meeting. What we have done as demonstrators, at the national level, is to also work in a number of countries, to sort of drive some infrastructure that we can use to build capacity. Because sometimes we have found that when the librarians and researchers are trained in without an opportunity to take that training into the everyday experiences, we don't get as much value from it. So part of the strategy in LIBSENSE is that we will take the infrastructure that's been developed by Africa Connect 3 and use that as a basis for policy development and capacity building. On the institutional side, the same thing is happening. We're supporting institutions directly as consortia within the country. And when I say we, I'm not talking about only the research networks now, but I'm talking about the entire community. And this community sometimes is driven by librarians, sometimes is driven by the NREN and the other strong institutions in the community that also drive this agenda. So for example, in Cote d'Ivoire, it's been driven by the virtual university, but they are bringing their colleagues together with the support of LIBSENSE and its partners, driving policy development workshops. In Nigeria, it is the research network. In Tanzania, it was the research network. But in Uganda, it was the consortium of Ugandan university libraries. So we're a real diverse community. And the idea is to make sure that those fundamental levels that will sort of drive sustainability are catered for. So on the institutional level, LIBSENSE is initiating a sort of early career open science researcher program. And the idea here is to provide training that allows these researchers, students to provide practical ways in which they engage and practice open science. So it was great to see the resources that Sarah was pointing at. Giant is in the middle of all of these conversations, so we'll be talking a little bit more about that. Otherwise, I thought, I would save some time. These are our contacts. You can email us at libsense@ren.africa, and the website is libsense.ren.africa. Thank you. So I hope I saved some of your time, Islam.
Yes. Oh, thank you very much, Omo, and it's really a good presentation. We'll come back to you later when we discuss about how to foster this open science cooperation and in Africa. So let us move now to the next presenter, who is Nabil Kusebi, who will give us a presentation on adapting ORCID to maximize impact of research contributions. And Nabil is an engagement lead, Middle East and Africa, responsible for fostering ORCID community adoption in the Middle East and Africa. As part of his responsibilities, Nabil supports ORCID members as they develop new and existing integrations and workflows. Before, he was working for Hewlett Packard Enterprise, covering the Middle East, Mediterranean, and African region. Nabil is passionate about engineering, art, humanitarian. In addition, he is speaking English, French, and Arabic since he's from Tunisia. مرحبا.
شكرا أستاذ إسلام. I
The
hope
floor
that
is
you can
yours.
Thank you very much. I hope that you can hear me well.
We do, yes.
Great. Thank you very much, Ustad Islam. This is a great pleasure to be with you today, especially with the panelists, the special panelist, I would say slate, like Dr. Islam, like Mr. Omo, like Sarah and Irina and Dr. Anna. Really, the objective today for me is to share what is ORCID for the researcher, why ORCID, what are we doing, here in the open research arena, and how the ORCID ID is really helping, let's say, the Arabic researcher in general, or the Arabic contributor to the research in general, in basically, and we're gonna see this in, or mainly disambiguating names. So I'm gonna give it a go and start sharing my desktop. So I'm gonna share this screen. So
There are three dots on the left-hand side. Yes, excellent.
All right, good. So, as I said, the objective really for this presentation is to share what is ORCID, how can ORCID help maximizing impact of research in general and research contribution for researchers around the world and globally. So my name is Nabil Ksibi. I'm the engagement lead for our global members at ORCID. And yeah, so basically I'll be sharing with you some good things about ORCID. For the agenda of today, we'll go through a small introduction, what is the mission of ORCID, an overview on the ORCID's offer, the ORCID adoption across the Arab states. Then we're gonna see what or how this ORCID record is looking like. And then we're gonna check about the value for the researcher, and we're gonna try to highlight how this identifier is bringing value for the researcher globally. So to start, the ORCID's mission, or the ORCID, let's say, objective in this world, is really to enable transparent and trustworthy connections between researchers, their contributions, and their affiliations by providing a unique persistent identifier for individual to use as they engage in their research, scholarship, and innovation activities. And this researcher is for free. So we are really, trying to realize this vision by applying like three interrelated, let's say, principles or points. First thing, we need to say that ORCID is a non-profit organization. We are led by our committee of members, means that our members are voting for our board of members, and they are really helping in, let's say, conceptualize or put in place our strategy for the next years. And if the members will decide that ORCID should, or the ORCID registry should shut down tomorrow, then we should only follow this decision. So our members are everywhere in the world, from Latin America to Africa to Europe to really North America. And yeah, all the continents. And that's really part of our, also part of our vision, is to include all the countries without borders, and yeah, including all the disciplines without any, let's say, exclusion or any, yeah, any setup to not engage widely with the researchers. So we provide an ORCID ID, which is a unique and persistent identifier free of charge for researchers. This is the small Arabic definition of what is ORCID, or what is the ORCID ID. We link this ORCID ID to an ORCID record so that the researcher can connect their contributions, publications, works, peer reviews, all that is related to their research work into that registry, so that they can have like centralized place to share, at the end with the public when they are looking to really share their contributions, their career, their biography, what they did basically, and even fundings or previous publications. And that's really, coming at the end of a QR code that you can attach to your conference poster, or that you can share within your business card, or even through email, or just the signature, or just the hyperlink. The ORCID hyperlink will be sufficient to consult your ORCID ID and have an idea on your basically works and what you did in the different research projects. We also offer a set of application programming interfaces, or what we call APIs. So those APIs are connected to this registry, and they offer the possibility to developers or individuals that are aiming to build, let's say, a system or an application that is connecting with the ORCID registry. And that would be in order to synchronize publications if you are a publishing system, or push funding information if you are a funder, or read information limited to, or set to trusted parties only on the ORCID record, so that if you want to build a profiling system or CV system, you can, let's say, call these informations from the ORCID registry via those APIs. Then, just to share with you like an overview of the ORCID spread, or how ORCID is doing in the Arab states, or the Arab-speaking region. As we can see, Egypt is really the first on the list, with the most, or like the highest number of researchers or ORCID IDs coming from Egypt. But unfortunately, we do not have a big community of members in Egypt, and we are working on this to get in touch with policymakers, governments, universities. We are really ready to do a lot of outreach for Egypt in order to align this usage with some institutional support as well. In Saudi Arabia, we have KAUST, actually, which is a pioneering university or member university of ORCID. They helped developing the DSpace patch for DSpace version 5 or higher, I think. And this patch is allowing basically, public API users and and ORCID members to integrate with ORCID using their DSpace instance, and that's really helped them in really for the case of KAUST, they can push from books, from articles, from books, chapters, publications, theses and dissertations, everything related to the research project or the conference, like the output of the research of this individual. So that's one case. We also have a couple of members in Iraq, but we're still working on the adoption, let's say, overall in the Arabic-speaking region. Then what is Orchid? So for those who already or doesn't know what is Orchid and how it looks like. So this is a 16-digit identifier linked to the Orchid domain. And adding a small HTTPS, it would be an hyperlink that can be accessed from anywhere and anytime. So I'm gonna go quickly to my Orchid records just to show you what I added there. Although I'm not a researcher, I just did a couple of, let's say, works and participated to a couple of publications. But yeah, I will show you my publication and be that wow. So this is my my name section, or AKA section. As you can see, I added my name in different variations, including the Arabic writing. I can also add my name in different other languages. I don't know, Mandarin, Thai, or any writing. Then also I can add my biography here. I can add my affiliation activities like employment, like education and qualification, like invited position and distinctions, membership and services, funding. So yeah, starting from the funding, it will be a different workflow with asserting, let's say, fundings from other platforms or from the funders system. So if I go to funding here, for example, just to show you that there is this search and link wizard or search and link functionality that can connect you directly to Dimensions and Dimensions wizard. So if you have fundings in Dimensions, you can synchronize them in your Orchid record. But other than that, a lot of funders are having their own custom submission or grant submission system, and they're integrating that with Orchid. So for the case of the region, we have the NRF South Africa already having a nice integration with Orchid and mandating the link with Orchid in their, let's say, applicant profile. We also have NACOSTI in Kenya, which is the National Commission for Science, Technology and Innovation. They adopted Orchid in their REMS system, and this is also the same case. So they basically provide research permit for the Kenyan community. Yeah, for any individual that would like to perform research in Kenya, basically. And they mandated the use of Orchid from the start, so you cannot log in on the REMS system unless you have your Orchid ID. So you will be using your Orchid ID to log into their portal, and then probably add some extra details like passport number and stuff like that that we do not request from the start. And I'll be going through the Orchid registration very quick, just a couple of seconds to show you that this is very simple. You can do it in 3 steps. Then, now just to continue here on the work section, there is also a search and link wizard here, as you can see. So I can use it to really synchronize my publications with all those databases or all those systems. And as you can see, we have the Crossref metadata search, we have the Department of Energy in the US, DataSite, Dutch National Bibliothèque, a lot of good, let's say, platforms that we can connect with. L'Archive from France, ISNI, JALC, the GOI Registration Agency in Japan. And of course, Scopus Elsevier, so you can connect your Scopus profile or Scopus instance with your Orchid records. So this is regarding the work section. As you can see here, I have an example here synchronized from Zenodo. So I just pushed this work or submitted this work on Zenodo, and I found it pushed automatically in my Orchid record. And this is because Zenodo is partnered with DataCite, which is a DOI registration agency. So a DOI is also a persistent identifier, just like Orchid. This is standing for Digital Object Identifier. And there are a couple of agencies that are doing this registration for DOIs, like DataCite, Crossref, GALC in Japan. So all those agencies are really helping in assigning DOIs to works and to publications. So as you can see, here's the metadata. This is DOI of my work. This is a very simple work. We can see the date added there, the last modified date, and the 3 different sources that were automatically merged into one work, because I added one manually, one was pushed by DataCite, and one was pushed from Zenodo DataCite, and the other one was pushed from Africa Archive Zenodo DataCite, because all those systems are linked and interoperable in a way. So that's the Orchid record. I wanted also to show you how, so on the left side, this is very easy. We have emails, the website, and social links. If you have any personal email personal website that you want to link to your Orchid record, you can do it via this section, the keywords of your contributions and the countries where you were. And there should be, other IDs section here, but I unlinked my Scopus profile, so it's not visible here. So I cannot show it as an example. Other than that, so I'm gonna quickly log out. I'm sorry, I'm just worried about timing. I'm just gonna go here. So should be on time. So this is the sign-in page. So if I'm new to Orchid and I want to register now, it's gonna ask me for my first name, my last name, which is optional. So if I can just add Nabil here, and a primary email address. What we recommend is to really have more than one email addresses. More than one email address linked to the Orchid record. This way, you'll not lose access to your record. Either you're using your institutional email address as principal email address or primary email address, and your personal Gmail or Yahoo email address as a second one. Then just by adding these couple of email addresses, I can go to next. Then we'll just have to confirm some security and notification settings, and then set your visibility in general in Orchid, and confirm the terms and conditions. So when I say visibility, it's really these dots, just because I think it's important. I'm gonna quickly go through that on the Orchid record, just to show you the 3 different levels of visibility. And I can do that really for any section that is interoperable with the API. For example, the name section, or the employments. If I have any employment that I want to set as private, I can use this lock. And as you can see here, you have those 3 different levels: everyone, trusted parties, and only me. I can really choose any level according to my needs for this, let's say, information. If I go to everyone, it will be public, so anyone can consult this information in my Orchid record. If I go to trusted parties, that will be only visible to trusted parties. For example, in the funding, the funder that will be reading about my previous, let's say, grants, or yeah, the university that I'm affiliated with, so they can access this type of information. If, of course, I set it trusted, trusted parties level. If it's only visible only to me, that means that it will not be visible to anyone else. So just to understand these three levels of privacy and visibility, so that you're all aware of how to, or we're all aware on how to configure your Orchid record section by section.
Nabil?
Yes?
To conclude?
Okay, sure. So so we went through the Orchid record. So this is, and you will see this in the PowerPoint presentation. Now, this is just an example showing Muhammad Mustafa, how it is really difficult to search for Muhammad Mustafa in the registry. And as you can see, and we can see that there are different affiliations related to Muhammad Mustafa. And Orchid is here really to solve this kind of issues and lift ambiguity on names. This is the same thing. As you can see, in Arabic we have al, or the attaching the name and or multiple names, and this is sometimes showing a setback when entering this information into machines and into computer, because they are not understanding the Arabic language first, and secondly, we have like different writings of our name. So I think that's that's pretty it. This is an example of an outreach, how Orchid is really helping in lifting name ambiguity and giving name flexibility and giving more time for research. And of course, all in one centralized place, and then reducing administrative burdens and have this portable profile data. Last slide, and this is the Orchid records over the world. We are 13 million Orchid records issued since 2012, and we have 7.5 Orchid records updated in 7.5 million Orchid records updated in 2021. Then the last news is that Orchid is now partner with ASREN. We signed an MOU a couple of months ago, and we really wish to continue this journey of basically lifting name ambiguity on researchers with ASREN, with LIBSENSE, with WACREN, with Ubuntu.net, and all the regional NRENs and local, even national NRENs to help us in this mission. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Nabil. It was really good. I think we'll come back to you later if we do have time, because this is quite important to make connection of researchers. Last speakers, but not least, is Arina Kuchoma, and she will give us a presentation on implementing open science at institutional and national levels. Arena is working in collaboration with libraries and library consortia in more than 50 countries in Africa and Asia and Europe. Wow, that's a big number of countries. You got experience and sharing. Arina Kuchoma advocates for open science to research results, facilities, as the development and the implementation of open science policies and infrastructure, and provides support and training. She sits on the boards of Confederation of Open Access Repositories, the Global Sustainability Coalition for Open Science Services, and the Networked Digital Library of Theses and Dissertations. She serves in the UNESCO Open Science Advisory Committee, the Space Community Advisory Team, and Co-Data Policy and Legal Working Group. The floor is yours, Irina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair, and it's a great pleasure to be here. And I hope you can see my screen and my slides. And I'd like to reflect together how we can speed up implementation of open science at institutional and national levels to support implementation of UNESCO recommendation on open science, which is available in English and in French languages, which is, I think, useful for this community. And I highlighted some of the areas of actions that we, as a community, could take. So, for example, in NREN and in LIBSENSE, we could promote a common understanding of open science to make sure that benefits of open science are really shared among everyone, and they are encouraging bibliodiversity and multilingualism. We could also develop aligned, effective institutional and national open science policies and legal frameworks, and also work together to align incentives for open science and encouraging responsible research and also researcher evaluation and assessment, and try to really incentivize quality science, recognizing the diversity of research outputs, activities and missions. Then another area is supporting non-commercial interoperable open science infrastructures and services, and that includes internet connectivity and bandwidths, NRENs, computing facilities, other digital public infrastructures and services, and also federated infrastructure for open science, and robust open community managed infrastructures, protocols, and standards to support bibliodiversity, and also shared multinational, regional, and national open science platforms. And we'll hear more about that in our second session. And then, of course, skills building is an important area, because we want to make sure that researchers could really benefit from open science and could practice open science. And that's an agenda item for universities to ensure that they provide training and education on digital research literacy, and also capacity building for open science. And this culture of open science is really fostered at institutional, national, and regional level. And I think this emphasis on early career researchers could be important, because they are the ones who could drive this future cultural change. And then, of course, promoting innovative approaches for open science. For example, encouraging sharing preprints, which are completed manuscripts that have been submitted for publication but haven't been published yet, practicing open peer review, practicing other open evaluation practices, and other participatory methods and techniques. Also encourage sharing of negative research results to make sure that people don't repeat same mistakes, and other open innovation and open science partnerships practices. And then I think that's what NREN is already doing, promoting international cross-border multi-stakeholder collaboration, where there could be more work on implementation of open science policies and also collaborations on metrics for open science for Arab states. And I would like to stress that in LIBSENSE initiative, we have Arabic language or Arabic working group, and that's a space that all of you could use to discuss open science implementation. And if you would like to collaborate with LIBSENSE on designing and implementing national open science roadmaps, and if your country aren't listed yet and aren't part of our discussions, please join up and we'll be happy to collaborate. And LIBSENSE recently released a collection of institutional use cases, how universities implemented open access to publications and research data management policies. And it includes examples from universities in a number of African countries, but we don't really have any examples from Arab states yet. And I see Diana is on the call, and if she wants to offer a Berzet use case, how a Berzet university implemented an open access policy, or if there are other colleagues in this session who would like to contribute an example, we'll be happy to collaborate on that and enrich this collection with use cases from Arab states. We also drafted in LIBSENSE a template for an institutional open access policy, which is aligned with UNESCO Recommendation on Open Science. And there is a link on my slides. So we do encourage you to use it and also get in touch with us if you want support. And I'd like to end up with a couple of slides about IFL, my organization, and we work in over 50 countries, and among them Palestine and Sudan are Arab states. And we advocate for institutional national funded policies that mandate open access via repositories. We also promote rights retention strategy because we consider that important for ensuring that journal articles are made available in repositories. We also advocate for open public infrastructures, such as open access journals, repositories for publications and data, and also other emerging platforms. We support enhancements of platforms for journals and repositories, and also we support our partners. Our partners are National Library Consortia, who are launching research data repositories and services with partners on the national or institutional level. And a very important area for us is open science and open research skills building, where we support skills development and also trying to ensure that institutional and national policies really incentivize and promote this acquisition of open science and research skills. And these are some of the examples of our ongoing projects on policies, platforms for publishing journals, repository enhancement, and open science training. And we've just released an updated guide for repositories that are built with DSpace software, how to make sure that they work really well. And we're releasing this week a similar guide for journal platforms on OGS. And we also released digital research literacy training program outline that helps to run training sessions for researchers on open science and open research skills, and all of this is openly available, and we're really happy that it's widely used. So thank you so much, and if we have time for questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Oh, thank you very much, Irina. Give us a few minutes just to discuss together and see how we could harmonize all these fruitful presentations. And we, if I recall what Sarah Jones said about how much challenges we are facing in open science and how the data stewardship is quite an issue of the open science, and how much the open science is a team approach. And this team approach would be across the border, and you recommended that Israel could play this role in a cross border. And Anna gave us the guidelines by Unesco, and the release of adoption of 193 countries of such guidelines. And OMO gave us the WASRE network, and I'm very glad when I played with some websites that you already engaged with Orchid, and Orchid announced that they are signing with Israel. So I think it comes up on a question I would like to raise to the panelists. We got like a global umbrella and UNESCO guidelines. We got some networks on a regional and continental level. And we got some national challenges and guides for implementation on institutional and national level. The question to the panelists is, how would we move forward fast? How, from your experience and the perspective, we still have a lot of challenges, but how we would promote it fast as the open science to the community? I'll start with Anna from the UNESCO perspective.
Yeah, no, that's a very challenging question, you know, and I'm sorry I'm the first one here. But what we've seen in different countries, first is that there is a lot of interest in open science. So for us, the fact that the recommendation was adopted by all the countries is also a sign of a political will to change the way science is functioning and to move towards open science. To go fast, I think all the different parts of the system need to know what we mean by open science, need to understand what their role is, and need to kind of move together. Because if we only do the top-down approach or the bottom-up, it's going to be a bit difficult to move fast. So I think what is important at the national level is really to kind of bring together all the stakeholders relatively quickly, understand where are the resources for all of those who want to switch to open science. And when I say resources, it's not necessarily just financial resources. It's also all of these different parts that one can have to their use to be able to switch to open science. And then provide also the financial resources to move on as well. So I think
Thank you, Anna.
That's from my point of view, yeah.
Thank you, Anna. Irina, Anna, she's saying about the political will and fund. Do you think that we need first to change the mindset of the researchers and the people to this kind of open science, or the mindset is not that much like political will and fund?
I think it would be good to learn from good practice examples. KAUST was already mentioned, and they've been practicing open access and research data management for a while. Universities in Palestine as well, and there are other examples in the region. So if we could somehow, I don't know, make an effort to document those examples, share, use them in advocacy discussions at our institutions. And I think research data management is really a big topic, and that's what we're suggesting in LIBSENSE. We want to set up a community of practice, people supporting implementation of research data management services and trainings in institutions. Because here you really need, you need a community to help you. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. And if I hope colleagues at this session, attending this session, will be interested to join this community. And thanks USREN and LIBSENSE for driving this.
Thank you, Arina. Omo and LIBSENSE, you know, Africa is a big continent and 55 member states, and we are not at the same level of connectivity for mindset for. How would you see that WASRIN could play an active role for promoting open science in Africa? What do you think? What other players could support for promoting quickly or fastly open science in Africa?
I think it's a combination of what Anna and Irina have sort of highlighted. So I think USREN is already playing that role. You know, USREN is involved in developing a harvester for discovery of Arabic content. You know, that those sort of linchpin positions are essential. It's also it can also adopt some of the, and it will adopt some of the actions that we have evolved in LIBSENSE. So in terms of what Anna was talking about, the other stakeholders that you need to connect to, you also need fora to develop opportunities for these connections. And that's what open science roadmaps, the national open science roadmaps can do, in the sense that in every country, there are the local dynamics. So the actors that are important, the ones that should be in the room will differ from country to country, depending on the structures. But if we did that with the NRENs anchoring that, then we can start that conversation. And some of what Anna was suggesting needs to happen can start to happen. We have seen examples in Nigeria. We have seen that, you know, the meeting in Uganda has brought the National Council of Science and Technology into the room. In Nigeria, it brought the Tertiary Education Funder, the Universities Association. And you're right, there's a lot of diversity and difference in the uptake, but this will start to create that impetus that we want. And then with the broader regional and continental frameworks and looking at best practices like Irina mentioned, we will start to align these different action plans in different countries. So I think that's one critical approach, and then USREN is central to that.
Oh, thank you very much. I think we just spent our allowed 2 hours. We finished on time. It's just a few seconds past 11. I thank you all for this fruitful presentation, fruitful discussions, and I'm really happy and glad for this kind of invitation from Yusuf. Back to you, Yusuf.
I can't speak after you and your distinguished speakers. Actually, you demonstrated the best way to proceed ahead, and I really thank you for the questions that you asked our colleagues. We are putting our extreme effort to go for further in supporting adapting and deploying open science strategies, platforms, all of that. It's by all means a combination of stakeholders need to be involved, and we are trying to do that at top level, we demonstrated in the opening yesterday, actually the day before on 13th. Open science was the main word that has been exchanged between around the 20 high level speakers or who have been part of the opening and so on. So we are taking further, but the mechanisms sometimes will vary from country to country or from region to region. But again, I admire the LIBSENSE as a good basis and the good guidelines and a good community that can take it further. So I would not talk more. I'd like to thank you, and maybe you can join the second part in 1 hour time to see more about initiatives, practices, and even our contribution as ASREN towards achieving towards open science in general and so on. We'll have presentation by our communication officer during the second session in the afternoon. So maybe you can have a break, and I invite you to be back in 1 hour time to the next session. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
very
Thank you,
much.
Arina. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Nabil.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Sarah,
Omo,
thank you, and take care.
Omo, thank you for the background. Thank you. Very nice background.
It's the curtains. Official office
Yes,
curtains.
yes, yes. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank
see
you.
all.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.